Hey, True Believers England team here. So I wanted to talk about this article saw on Popverse, and it's Tom Brevoort basically talking about continuity. And the thing is, I've had this conversation with him before, back when Comicsgate was actually a thing, and we were talking about comics and not each other and all that. It is this article, I'm going to go through it in just a little bit, but what gets me is this whole thing. Tom Brevoort goes off on continuity, not in the way you might think, but the thing is if you come into this, it's kind of easy to defend. It's kind of, well, what he's talking about is this and that. No, he's talking about everything. He's talking about the most minute of details or the biggest details. Nothing matters at Marvel Comics. Nothing matters at DC Comics either. Don't let them off the hook on this one. But nothing matters at Marvel Comics, and they are willing to throw everything out and to create whatever story they're talking about at the time, which means it won't be the same the following. So I figure let's get into this article here. I'm going to go through it, and it's by a guy named Grant Arnot once again at Popverse. So here it goes. It says, how old is Peter Parker? When did the X-Men form? Did Civil War happen under the Bush administration? These are all questions that have been asked by regular Marvel comic readers trying to reconcile their favorite mid-30s superheroes with 60-year plus of comic history. Recently, one of the Marvel's top editors offered some advice for folks trying to keep a timeline in their heads. Stop trying. Okay. Right away, this seems like he's just saying absolutely nothing. Nothing matters at Marvel. You shouldn't worry about it. And I agree to a certain point. Comics are stupid. I love them, but comics are stupid. What ends up happening is something will happen to make it seem like, or to finish a story, or you'll see like maybe Spider-Man or somebody will be overpowered for a moment to beat the bad guy. Or all of a sudden, Superman can make the Great Wall of China rebuild by looking at it. That kind of shit. There's all these little itty-bitty details that are out there. And at any time, a writer can pick it up and say this is part of the continuity, or it gets ignored forever and a day. For fuck's sake, Spider-Man had a Doom buggy at one point in time. So it's he doesn't need it, but it's out there. And they were trying to sell toys. Superman had this little spaceship with the arms that came. That's why I'm doing this, because it had arms. It's whatever the hell they decide is important at the time. So if you keep trying to, well, what happened? What happened? Or if you keep trying to put, continuity, like, well, wait a second, isn't Nick Fury was a World War II veteran, right? So doesn't that make him 90 years old? Well, how does that work? Well, you know what? Why are you freaking bothering about it? I get what he's saying as far as that's concerned. Yeah, things are going to be different. Each comic book era is of its time. And so, yeah, I get that. But the problem is they take this too far, and we're going to get to that. Hello to Ethereal Dragon just popped in. All right, so the question came up in the most recent Subtext post by Marvel's Tom Brevoort. You know what? Maybe I should have just gone to there instead of Popverse. Sorry for not going straight to the source. Brevoort, who is currently heading up X-Men relaunch, has been contending with the comic industry sliding timeline for longer than some fans have been alive to read about it. One of the things that pisses me off a lot about Tom Brevoort, Jim Lee, and all of them is they've seen good storylines. They've seen good art, and yet they still let the shit pass through as if it is, in fact, good. You could say, well, this is timely, or this is the way the style is, only because you say it is. Riley Rosmo doesn't need to get work at freaking Marvel or DC, and yet he does, because you allow it, Okay, so anyway. And offered a helpful breakdown to one concerned fan named Joel Zerber. A few years ago, Joel writes, Joel, you talked about characters' ages. So what would be the current age of characters, considering there are at least 6 or 7 generations of New Mutants nowadays? I think trying to nail this stuff down is almost always a mistake, answers Brevoort. and one that just causes arguments among the fan base. So I think that's to be avoided. Anything causes arguments among the fan base. Truly. And some fans, I'm gonna throw this out to comic book fans, geek fans, whatever. They take it way too seriously. You know, if I say I don't like, one of the things that gets people, I don't like Doctor Who. Do not like it. Do not like it, Sam. I am. I will not have it with a mouse. I would not have it in a house. I will not watch it with a fox, even if that fox was Courtney Cox. It will not happen. It's stupid. It's horrible. It's one of the worst TV shows. And you know what? Everybody's now catching up to what I've always known. Doctor Who sucks. And that right there, people take that personally, and they jump all over me like I insulted them rather than things. So yeah, sometimes fans take it a little bit too far. Don't take it personal. That being said, we're going to get to that. R3 is saying if continuity didn't matter, the MCU wouldn't have happened. The MCU forgot that because Marvel Comics forgot that. My thing about the MCU, by the way, is it's a great slogan on a T-shirt, but it's bullshit. It's incredible. It's deep and smelly bullshit, and I'll explain why. We all want a She-Hulk movie. We all want a good, but we want it good. We want a good Ms. Marvel movie. We want a good anything. Nobody would have been pissed at She-Hulk had they actually wrote a fine script. So it's not the fact that they're showing off the female characters. If they did it well, everybody would be like, holy shit, did you see that Storm movie? That was awesome. But yeah, that's why the MCU thing is bullshit. Because the MCU, and talking about how horrible it is actually only saying we don't want women in movies. But if you got to add that subtext. That's my relationship with the MCU thing. I'm great slogan. It sells T-shirts, but yeah, it doesn't matter either. Meanwhile, with Star Wars, the writer of Acolyte blames Dave Filoni. That's a whole other kettle of fish, ethereal. So anyway, let's see. To be fair, causing arguments among the fan base is pretty much a given for any comic book decision. But we hear what you're saying. Tom, and to be fair, the editor did try to set things straight-ish regarding some ages and rough timelines, claiming that the modern MU started around 15 years ago from whenever the reader is coming in, give or take. I always believe the same thing. Like Batman and Superman have been doing this for about 15 years. I know that's DC. But I'm a DC fan. I'm more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan. I always believe Batman, Superman, they've been doing it for 15 years, and it's a sliding scale from there. You know, the newer characters are brand new. And yeah, you end up having to crunch a whole bunch of history in there. But, you know, in 10 years, there's a lot of days, a lot of hours and minutes. All right, so it did try to set things straight. 15 years from whenever the reader is coming in, give or take. That is to say, he continues, the Fantastic Four's origin always happened about 15 years ago, regardless of whatever year it is or it happens to be. Of the X-Men, Magneto is by far the oldest, almost double the age of anybody else, because his origin has been inexorably linked to a historic event. And once again, that's Sergeant Fury the same way. You know, it's he's a World War II vet, so they had to come up with this. One of the theories is that he is now a life model decoy. What you're seeing now is I've heard that one, but you just up his. You just keep upping his origin. So for those in the 40s and 50s, he's a World War II vet. For those in the 60s and 70s, he's a Vietnam vet. You know, for the 80s, 90s, he was in Desert Storm or even just military or whatever. And then of course we have Afghanistan, Iraq, and such. You know, you just keep pulling it forward. America's going to have a war for you, and yeah, that's how you handle this. I guess I'm a different breed of cat, because my thing was I would read comics and I would like them or I would dislike them, and whatever was put in, obviously it had to go along with the continuity of the character. But the timeline never really bothered me. Maybe that's because I have been reading for so long. I've been reading comics since 1974. I've been a collector since 1980. You know, I was 4 years old. You know, I'm not freaking when I started reading. I'm not taking care of my comics and making sure they were for, you know, I'm just reading them and don't mind where I'm throwing them, all that. That's why the 6-year gap. But I've been through presidents. I've seen oh, what's his name? Richard Nixon be a snake. You know, I've seen Ronald Reagan tell Superman to go kick the shit out of Batman. You know, you watched Bill Clinton give Superman's eulogy. You watch certain events go through and you just realize that comic books are a product of their time. All right, let's see. With that out of the way, Brevoort dives into the real confusion behind the characters' ages and really one of the biggest issues in modern superhero comic storytelling. And he says, but what you're really asking is how can we possibly fit so many stories in such a limited space? And the answer is that it's fiction, so we can do whatever the hell we like. I think that's what's pissing a lot of people off, provided that the readership goes along with it. Fair enough, Tom, but just let us know what this means for the disco craze that saw Dazzler wear sequined roller boots for years. And by the way, she should never stop. I've seen the punk Dazzler. I've seen the different Dazzlers. And in all honesty, it just ain't right. You need roller disco Dazzler. When X-Men, okay, and I guess I'll go to the original article in just a little bit here. Let me get some comments. It's not just female characters; it also downplays its male characters. And once again, as I said, MCU is fucking bullshit as a definition. It's a great slogan. But what you're talking about is good writing. What you're talking about is Ripley can be a strong woman and Hudson and Hicks didn't have to be weak men. That's bad. That would have been bad writing, but they didn't do that. That's why Aliens is good writing and this other shit is bad. That's what it's all about. And I'll guarantee you, I'll put him to the test anytime. Gary wants a good She-Hulk movie. He's not going, oh, fuck that, females suck. But that's what, if you put that slogan out there all by itself, that's what that means. And I think he actually wore a t-shirt that said make Marvel male again or something like that. I think Wolverine is even older than him. He is continuity wise. Let's see. Hello, Aloise. How you doing? You guys, you arrived at the end of the first article, but I want to go to the source because it seems he says more here. Let's see. Welcome, everyone. He says, don't really have all that much in the way of preamble this week, blah, 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 I'm afraid. So we'll dive right into things. While I appreciate all the questions, I'm going to begin pulling back on just how many I answer every week. Okay, here we go. Question about destroying characters brought up Beast's heel turn during the Krakoa era and made me remember another heel turn that seemed rather strange to me when it happened. Phil Coulson joining Mephisto during Jason Aaron's Avenger run. Do you remember why Coulson was chosen as the bad guy? As an editor, how do you know when the heel turn or face turn will work for a character? I do not like villain Beast. No, it does not go along with the character. You know, if you follow the Beast, that's not in his character. If you were there for the 70s, for the 80s, and so forth and so on. It just didn't do it. It's the same thing with Scott fucking Emma Frost and screwing over Jean Grey. That's not in his character. That was a bullshit move, and it sucks that they carried on with that kind of thing. He says, well, Brandon, the truth is Phil Coulson was at that point dead, having perished during Secret Empire. So Jason picking up on him from that status quo, given that he was going to function as a tool of Mephisto, made a lot of sense. How? Now, if you believe in, now I guess one does not have to be the evidence of the other. But if you believe in hell, why would you not believe in heaven? Why would Phil who was a good man who actually helped people, why would he then be a tool of essentially what is Marvel's devil? It doesn't make sense. Plus, it was Jason Aaron, whom I think has a good track record of treating characters well for the most part. I certainly trusted him to do so, and I figured that I was in a position to say something if I thought he was taking things too far. My guess is you just didn't fucking say no. Like I said, I talked to him about this before, about the continuity thing, and this guy doesn't believe in it. He doesn't. And I talked to him about also the Ms. Marvel thing and said she's a teenager. You know, she should be the friendly neighborhood Ms. Marvel. She shouldn't be on trips to fucking Calcutta or to China or shit like that, jumping on a jet with the rest of the champions. Mom and dad are mad. This actually takes time. You're not insta traveling this, you know, these distances and such. Well, we do pay attention to family, he says, and blah, blah. No, you don't. No, you don't. All right. Let's see. This person, Allison Cabot, is saying, is Namor still considered a mutant? If so, can we expect him to interact with the core X-Men? One of the dumbest decisions as well. Oh my gosh, he's got little wings on his feet. No other Atlantean does. He's a mutant. This is why he's a mutant. Because Namor didn't sell books, and the X-Men did when they decided it. I think it kind of, and you guys let me know. I think it dilutes his character when you make him a mutant. You make him half human, half Atlantean. That's enough. Namor is and always will be a mutant, but he's in prison following the end of Jason Aaron's run of Avengers, where he turned himself in for the crimes against humanity. We'll be picking up on this situation in the upcoming Namor situation, but it's going to be more about laying out cosmology for these conductors. Let's see. When the X-Men play their favorite team sport, is it underhand softball or overhand baseball? Given the fact that powers often come into play, I have to imagine the X-Men play overhand baseball. That's actually a decent question. You know, it sounds like, okay, it's about nothing, but it really is. I like that. It's a decent question because it's asking about the characters of the game, you know? That's actually pretty good. Was there ever any talk of showing how COVID fell? Fuck you. Okay, I'm just skipping that one. Tobias Carroll says, do you see any parallels between editing the Avengers titles in the aftermath of Secret Wars and editing X books in the aftermath of Krakoa? And if so, is there anything you learned from the former that you've applied to the latter? He says, no. To me, editing Avengers after Secret Wars is really no different than editing. No, they're all the same. I just say do whatever you want. Prove me wrong. show me his track record where it seems like he's saying no, or maybe that's out of character. I mean, he just had an article where he says, yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Timelines and all that doesn't matter. Now, granted, I don't think he's going as far as we say he is, but yeah. Dave is saying, I started reading comics in 88, 89, and back then everything before mattered. From the 60s to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the Marvel Universe updates. It does. But like I said, what might not matter are the little minute details that really date something. You know, you could do the death of Superman right now where Trump gave the eulogy because he was the president at the time. You couldn't do it with Biden because he can't speak. Let's see. I don't even mean actual sales numbers, but I remember when Marvel Age would publish a top 10 Marvel sellers list, so we knew what the top books were without copies specified. Would Marvel do this again? And he says, I don't know that we would in a vacuum without a good reason. I just don't know that it's anything that anybody among the general public needs to know. And that's kind of funny that they would do that. Dave was talking about, yeah, okay, they used to do this in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They would tell us that. They were proud to tell us what was good, what was selling, and what wasn't. It's like, yeah, hell, you got to go check this out. Or, you know what, you guys are missing out on this awesome book. It would be that kind of thing. All righty. Ray Cornwell asks, my girlfriend and I were talking about Krakoa. I'm doing it. Look, I get it. I should have read it. I should be reading more new comic books, but god damn, I can't stand. There's a lot of stuff I cannot stand. God bless those who followed it. You know, I read a few and I was like, fuck it. They made the X-Men the villains. I'm out. I went back for the Hellfire Gala because I thought that looked horrible. And I was right. But there's plenty of nothing that came out of the Krakoa era that I enjoyed. When they conquered death, they said, hey, no story matters because there are no stakes. So why fucking read it? It's like reading a Deadpool book. Oh my gosh, he's cut in hand, he's healed. They made Wolverine overpowered. You know, there used to be a time where you could slit Wolverine's throat and he would bleed out before he had a chance to heal. So, okay, there's stakes to it. Of course, they played fast and loose with his healing factor. So, you know, because he and Sabretooth would slash each other all up and down the block. So, let's see. So if Peter Parker had a kid, would that kid be a mutant? All right. I'm doing a bit of Core Marvel Unlimited reread. Why? To prepare you for taking over the books. And she asked me, so if Peter Parker had a kid, would that kid be a mutant? And I said, no, I don't think so, because in other realities, when Peter Parker had a kid, the kid had powers, but she wasn't a mutant. If she's born with them, she's a mutant. That's the rules, right? Since the powers aren't really different from the parents, it's not really a mutation. I guess that's one way to look at it. Let's see. He's half human, half Atlantean. That doesn't mean he can't be a mutant. That was like saying a half white, half Asian can't be a mutant. They can't. Only the pure whites. I'm just kidding. But I guess you got a point there. But what I'm saying is, I think it's just one step too far. You know, the whole thing, his identity, Namor's identity was the Atlantean part. He gave, he gave up the human part. He just flat out, his entire personality was his arrogance, because not only was he an Atlantean, he was the king of Atlantean. So identifying or embracing any other part other than the Atlantean goes against the Namor character. And that's what I meant by saying it was just one step too far. All right. So let's see. And then, okay, see, then I realized, how does that work? When a kid of superpowered parents has powers, when do we consider the kid a mutant? I know the real answer, whatever makes for a better story. A lot of the changes in Franklin Richard over the last few years. He says, over the years, Ray being a mutant in the Marvel Universe has been defined as possessing the X gene that allows for all sorts of ridiculous, crazy powers. So if Spidey's child inherited abilities but didn't have the X gene, then they wouldn't be a mutant. But if they did have it, well, okay. I mean, I guess that's an explanation. Let's see, odd question, but every column there seems to be always at least one, the spelled te. I've gamified the reading of your column to include, man, that's just way too much. You mentioned how a few of the upcoming X-writers have different approaches to social media, as social media presence or influence something Marvel editorial factors in when casting considerable potential writers. He says, no, not really. No fucking shit. You got Marvel writers out there flat out telling you that you're not worth the freaking paper you're printed on because you don't agree with their take on the character. No, not really, Cameron. I'm looking for writers who can bring something to the page and to the stories, nothing else. And honestly, I haven't seen any real evidence that having a strong social media profile necessarily equates to great sales. If you think about it in sales, but it does work in reverse there, Tom, because people get turned off by people who call them racists, fascists, homophobes, and so forth and so on. Talked to Tom Taylor about that. Let's see. Please tell me you and your team have a plan in place in your future stories to counter and show that the Broken Bath scene is not what we think it is. Because I know you and your team have both talent, creative skills to pull it off. Plus, also, I want to believe in your... I have no idea what the Broken Bath thing is, so let's move on. Beast has had a wild 2 decades from pretending to be gay in Morrison's New X-Men to basically violating every individual section of the Geneva Convention and its X-Force. His slow moral decline has been an incredible sight, where a collection of writers' individual decisions with such, okay, it's the Beast thing. I think I'm losing interest in this. So there we go, guys. Anywho, like I said, I've talked to this guy about the continuity and such before. It's, if you think, the article, I'll tell you straight up, the article is basically, don't worry about every little detail. And he's right. That part is right. But I've also talked to him, and I know for a fact that nothing matters. Nothing matters. Peter Parker can't get married because that shows character growth. Peter Parker can't stay with MJ. So if you want Peter Parker and Mary Jane together, you're not going to get him in Amazing Spider-Man anymore. You're going to get him in you're going to get him in The Ultimate. and everybody loves the Ultimate. Why? Because of fucking character growth. There's a saying that went around. I don't know if they're still saying it to people, but you don't give audiences what they want, then there's no surprises. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard comic book creators ever put pen to paper to write down. The truth is you give the readers what they want, but you do it in such a way that they don't know they wanted it. You know, look at the Watchmen or Batman's Dark Knight Returns for Frank Miller. Two of the biggest stories of the 80s, the greatest period of comic book history ever. That was my 10 to 20 years, guys. So that's what I believe. But point being is two of the biggest stories. They gave us some excellent superhero stories, but they did it in such a way we didn't know we wanted it. You know, but there you go. I don't know. They on the other hand have taken this whole thing about don't take the minute details to include the bigger details on either side of the fence. This isn't a Marvel problem. On DC, they made Tim Drake gay instead of respecting the fact that he had 30 years of dating, for a lot of it, the same girl. And then they put him with his friend who wanted to bang his mom. I mean, that was the freaking character thing about this guy. He would always come in and he would talk about how hot Tim Drake's mom was. But no, this is the guy. This is the guy that they got Tim Drake shacking up with now because they needed a gay character. And instead of creating one or finding somebody who was ambiguous, I've always said, I don't mind they made John Kent gay. We never got an answer on that. Now we do. Okay, fine. Tim Drake, however, that's a lot different. So you see that kind of shit. Hey, Glenzer, what's up? Now give me the shooter era where continuity means everything. Yes. Like I said, my teen years were, the 10 to 20s was the 1980s. Jim Shooter ran in Marvel, and he did it well. He did it really freaking well. And one of the things that pissed a lot of people off, John Byrne, but he gets pissed off at the drop of a hat, was the fact that Jim Shooter would say no. No, that's not what that character would do. That's not what that would do. You need that strong editor-in-chief who will hire strong story editors or book editors, whatever they call them, where they're looking after, okay, I edit the X-Men, I edit the Spider-Man. Yeah, you got to have somebody who looks at this stuff and goes, you know what? No, that's not the character. It's bad. Let me see. You could be more than you are. It's the whole point of the heroes. Namor is Atlantean. He's in his mind. He is not half human. He is Atlantean. That's why he's arrogant and foolish, because he is always putting himself above humanity, and he is half human. If he grabs onto any other identity other than Atlantean, it's not his way. That's not the way of Namor. Namor is, in his mind, Atlantean, and therefore can do whatever he wants. And that's how the character should be written. Or at least that is the starting point of Namor. From there, tell those stories. But that is his core, his identity. He is as wrapped up in his Atlantean identity as Magneto is in his mutant identity. Let's see. I have an X chromosome. Can I be a mutant? There you go. Let's see. I don't get that logic with Marvel. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Tev. Nothing matters in new comics because they're only drug mules for the cartel, aka Disney. Pretty much, right? So long as the movies are making. Oh, wait. No, they're not. Okay. Like, are Marvel this stupid of not letting Peter Parker move forward? They keep moving him back. They keep moving him back now, don't they? Every time they have some character continuity, they bring him right back. I mean, at one point, didn't Dan Slott go, wait a second, if this kid's a scientific genius, why isn't he a billionaire? Well, you know what? There's a lot of scientists out there who aren't. They're not all starting their tech companies. I think it would have been something for him to start a tech company which grew and then collapsed, because while he may be a genius scientist, he's not a businessman. They're two different things. I got to tell you, maybe that happened. I don't know. I read the tail end of all that bullshit, and it was bullshit. But and then you write him dumber than he was when he was the superior Spider-Man. I think that was Doc Ock, right? Guys, I got to tell you, there was a period of time where I dropped freaking comics. It was the New 52 era. I read the first issues, and I was, you know what, you guys, I'm out. So I stepped away, and then when I heard about Rebirth, I kind of jumped back in. Let's see. Editor's supposed to make your story better than failing in Marvel and DC. They don't have any strong. Exactly. Yeah, that was Doc Octavia says. Well, there you go, gang. I chewed your ears off for a half an hour talking about Tom Brevoort. It just, when I saw the article, it reminded me of the conversation, because what it was, I was talking about, you guys don't seem to care about what happened. You know, you don't care about continuity. And here's the big thing. If I leave you with anything, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If the writers or an artist, if the editors, Tom Brevoort being one of them, cannot believe that these are real characters, then how are we supposed to believe that? You know, and he says it's just fiction, which kind of says continuity doesn't matter. Just wipe it off the table. If you say it's just fiction, then we're going to say it's just fiction and it doesn't matter also. And when we say it doesn't matter, we stop buying it. And yeah, I'm not saying Spider-Man is real and he's flying around or anything. That's bullshit, and it's a fucking reductive take on what I just said. When you read a story, you need to believe in the characters in order to get emotionally involved, to actually care what happens to those characters. And if the writers can't do it, we're not going to be able to do it. A couple more comments and then we're gone. If Marvel Comics went to a publisher who acted as a contractor, and that contractor had an autonomy and went back to traditional characters and stories, the comics would start to matter again and maybe even sell again. And Tubby's saying, if they don't care, then what is the point of the Ultimate Spider-Man series outselling the main book? They don't care. You care. So when somebody actually gives, in a different way, by the way, what you wanted, you go after it. DEI, I don't know. I don't know what why they're not letting the main Marvel universe be what we wanted, but there you go. The world outside your window. That was the Stan Lee quote, Dave. Marvel needs to move its offices away from that gay bar that they're in, you know, because they're opening up going, hey, guess what? Everybody's gay now. All the characters. All right. Well, with that going, guys, thank you very much for hanging out. As always, don't forget to click the likes and the shares and comment on this in some way, shape, or form. Please comment on this after it's posted. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching. Have a good day. Enjoy. Oh, and don't forget, tonight, 10:30, we're going to do another comic book cover ranking. So please join us for that.